Mark. Welcome to Libraries Preserving Access in Times of Crisis, a special global event to mark Banned Books Week 2025. On behalf of the IFLA Management of Library Association Section, MLAS, I am honored to welcome you to this timely webinar. We are very proud to collaborate with the Library Theory and Research Section, LTR, and the IFLA Freedom of Access to Information and Freedom of Expression Committee, FAIFE, to host this important conversation. This is the third consecutive year MLAS organizes a global webinar during Banned Books Week, the second year in partnership with FAIFE, and our first collaboration with LTR. We are excited to continue building these important partnerships. At MLAS, our mission is to empower and support library associations worldwide so they can be strong, sustainable, and influential advocates for libraries and the communities they serve. Over the past year, we launched the Building Strong Library Associations Initiative from MLAS, which focuses on 5 key priority areas: library advocacy, financial sustainability, membership retention, strategic planning, and information integrity. This framework is designed to help associations grow in capacity and resilience, and to support these, MLAS has co-presented events with library associations, such as the Lebanese Library Association, and they have a representative during today's program. And also we collaborated with IFLA sections globally, like we are today. We partner with IFLA's regional divisions to deliver webinars that reflect regional needs, and the recordings are available on the MLAS YouTube channel. We are also exploring a pilot mentoring program to strengthen associations through peer learning and leadership development. As we gather today, Banned Books Week reminds us that intellectual freedom remains under threat. Around the world, we witness increasing censorship, the erasure of marginalized voices, and the destruction of cultural heritage. But libraries continue to stand at the front lines, preserving access, defending the freedom to read, and protecting cultural memory, even in the most challenging circumstances. Today, we are honored to hear from inspiring colleagues working in the United States, Lebanon, and with Indigenous communities, who will share how libraries respond to crises with innovation, care, and determination. As chair of MLAS, I'm proud that we continue to create spaces like these, where global voices come together to share knowledge, strategies, and solidarity. Thank you for being here today and for the critical work you do in your communities to uphold the right to access to information. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce our distinguished speakers. Paea Paringatai, IFLA President Elect from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Dr. Martin Gardner, Director of Amherst College Library in the USA and editor of the Intellectual Freedom Manual published by the American Library Association. And Essine Yemagel, representing the Lebanese Library Association. In 2024, MLAS proudly co-presented LLA's annual conference with a focus on digital preservation of cultural heritage. Thank you, Jonathan Hernandez, Chair of FAIFE, who is managing Zoom, and he will be bringing closing remarks later. And now, please join me in welcoming Yasuyo Inoue, Chair of the Library Theory and Research Section.
Thank you, Loida. This is Yasuyo Inoue. I'm a chair of LTR, and this is the first trials to collaborate with other sections because LTR last several years keenly connected to education and training sections, but we should expand our horizon to with other sections because theory and research in every subject we should continue to do the theory and research. So we should expand. So this is first trial, our new horizon. So thank you, Roida.
Thank you so much, Yasuyo. Yasuyo, Jonathan, and many of the colleagues here today have been involved in the intellectual freedom matters for many years, and we are glad to collaborate. Now, I would like to welcome our first speaker, Paea Paringatai, IFLA President Elect. Welcome, Paea.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Loida. Hello and warm greetings to everyone gathered across time zones and territories. I extend my sincere thanks to FAIFE, MLAS and the Library Theory and Research section for creating this opportunity. I'd like to acknowledge the First Peoples of every place we join from today, the original knowledge holders, storytellers and guardians of memory. For me, as a Māori woman, it is both a privilege and a responsibility. To identify as Indigenous is not simply to carry identity, it is also to carry accountability. Our voices echo generations behind us and therefore must make room for generations to come. To speak as Indigenous is to create space for other Indigenous peoples to speak for themselves. To honour Indigenous knowledge is to honour autonomy, not appropriation. Honour partnership, not possession. As Linda Tuhiwai-Smith reminds us, our survival, our humanity, our worldview and language, our imagination and spirit, our very place in the world depends on our capacity to act for ourselves. That is the heart of this conversation, reclaiming the freedom to know and the freedom to be known on our own terms. When a book is banned, a story is silenced. For Indigenous peoples, censorship began long before the printed page. It began when languages were outlawed, when names were rewritten, when knowledge systems expressed through song, ceremony, carving, and landscape were dismissed as myth. Mignolo notes colonial power controlled knowledge by controlling the terms of the conversation. These systems replaced relational understanding with categorization, collective ownership with copyright, and living memory with static text. Yet Indigenous people sustained their narratives in the face of forgetting. Knowledge adapted, encoded in weaving, carried in lullabies, mapped through rivers and stars. We walk backwards into the future. We carry our past with us, reading the land as our first and most enduring library. This year's theme, Libraries Preserving Access in Times of Crisis, speaks to the reality that around the world, even in 2025, intellectual freedom is most threatened when societies face uncertainty. Crises, whether political, environmental, or cultural, test our values, and what disappears in those moments often reveals what societies fear to face. As Tuck and Young warn, colonisation is an ongoing structure, not an event. Today, that structure can manifest in quieter forms, editing, omission, or reshaping Indigenous stories to fit dominant comfort zones. When Indigenous words and worldviews are removed from children's early readers in the name of standardisation, it signals whose knowledge is seen as universal and whose is treated as optional. When the first words a child reads no longer includes the language of the land, that is not accessibility, it is erasure. The freedom to read must include the freedom to be seen, to see ourselves reflected in what we read, and to recognise that preservation without participation is not true access. Libraries and archives have stood at the intersection of memory and power. They can preserve knowledge or imprison it. For generations, they have collected Indigenous materials through lenses of control and categorization. But transformation is happening. Institutions are beginning to shift from custodianship to co-creation, rewriting catalogues to restore Indigenous names, designing access systems grounded in reciprocity and centering consent as a foundation. Simpson observes refusal is not a lack of engagement, but a recognition of sovereignty. True partnership recognises that refusal, protection, and selective sharing are part of Indigenous intellectual freedom, not its denial. The freedom to read means little if some voices are never written, heard, or valued. Freedom to read must be paired with freedom to be read, to be understood on our own terms. For Indigenous peoples, invisibility is a form of censorship. As Ngujiwa Thiongo asserts, any language has a dual character. It is both a means of communication and a carrier of culture. When our languages and cosmologies are absent from public narratives, the world's imagination narrows. Those of us visible in global spaces must use that visibility to open pathways for others. Representation should never become substitution. Autonomy must always be upheld. Indigenous thought challenges the foundations of Western information systems by insisting that knowledge is not a resource to be extracted, but a relationship to be maintained. Indeed, if research doesn't change you as a person, then you probably haven't done it right. The same can be said for libraries. If access doesn't transform our relationships, it likely falls short of being ethical. Knowledge carries obligations to people, to land, to ancestors, to those yet to come. Openness without ethics can reproduce colonial extraction. The right to know must be balanced by the responsibility to protect. When libraries move from digitizing to contextualizing, from accumulating data to restoring meaning, they enact what Wilson calls relational accountability. This is how we might move from information systems to knowledge ecosystems. Across the information world, a quiet revolution is reshaping how memory is held and shared. Communities are reclaiming authority over their archives. Elders lead digital storytelling projects. Scholars design metadata that honours Indigenous language structures. Educators position Indigenous science and philosophy as foundational, not supplementary. Each action redefines what counts as knowledge. Libraries are not neutral. They are instruments of either dominance or liberation. Every bilingual storybook, every oral history recorded under community direction, every data policy shaped by Indigenous ethics is a declaration of sovereignty and a testament to resilience in times of crises. Our task is not just to invite Indigenous knowledge into existing systems, but to reimagine the systems themselves. The journey moves through 5 interlinked steps. Recognition. Acknowledge that Western knowledge systems are cultural constructs shaped by privilege and power. Inclusion. Make space for Indigenous voices, a beginning, not the destination. Rebalancing. Question who benefits from how knowledge is defined and accessed. Collaboration. Co-create with Indigenous peoples as equal partners. Transformation, shift from ownership to relationship, from extraction to reciprocity, from access to accountability. As Tuck and Young remind us, the decolonial desire is not for recognition, but for the repatriation of land and life. The pathway of intellectual freedom is not about fitting everything into one worldview, but allowing many worldviews to shape the future together. Libraries have the potential to model relationships grounded in reciprocity, equity, and trust. This requires more than consultation. It demands co-design, co-decision, and co-ownership. When libraries embed relational ethics into their policies, recognising community authority, cultural protocols, and Indigenous governance, they become spaces of partnership. Freedom without consent is not freedom, it is conquest. To preserve access in times of crises, libraries must balance openness with stewardship, protecting what is sacred, sharing what is permitted, and always respecting the communities to whom the knowledge belongs. To identify as Indigenous in global spaces is both a privilege and a duty. It means standing with integrity, knowing when to speak and when to step back. True leadership is measured not by how much we speak, but by how many others we enable to speak for themselves. Our collective responsibility is to transform representation into redistribution of power, of access, of decision-making. Freedom to read must therefore include freedom to self-determine, to decide what stories are told, how they are told, and by whom. Let me close with a Māori proverb. Toi tū te kupu, toi tū te mana, toi tū te whenua. Preserve our language, preserve our dignity, preserve our land. The freedom to read is inseparable from the freedom to belong, to know ourselves through our own stories. When we read the land, listen to our elders, and protect knowledge with integrity, we practice the highest form of literacy, relational literacy. Censorship may be so 1984, but preserving access in times of crisis means more than resisting bans. It means rebuilding systems that honour relationship, reciprocity, and responsibility. May we continue to defend the freedom to read, and just as importantly, the freedom for every Indigenous peoples to speak, to share, and when needed, to remain silent on their own terms. Emihiana, thank you all for your kind attention and presence today. My thanks again to MLAS, FAIFE, and the Library Theory and Research section for the generous invitation to share thoughts with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this very insightful information, Te Paea. And there are many layers, just to use a term, when it comes to access to information and freedom of expression. And we are very grateful to hear from you and these insights. And we take this, welcome the information and take it very seriously. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Martin Gardner.
Thank you, Loida, for having me here today, and welcome. I am Martin Garner. I come to you from Amherst College, which is in Massachusetts. We are on unceded Nonotuck land. I'd like to also acknowledge our neighboring Indigenous nations, the Nipmuc and Wampanoag to the east, the Mohegan and Pequot to the south, the Mohican to the west, and the Pecumtuck and Abenaki to the north. Te Paea, I really appreciated your comments, and I just wanted to share in the chat a group that we are part of here at Amherst College, which is Local Context. We are striving to reach the stewardship and relationship goals that you talked about so eloquently. So thank you so much for prefacing our work with that. So today I'm here to talk a little bit about the situation in the United States when it comes to preserving access in times of crisis. Let me just make sure that I start my time here. And we have, I'm going to try to get through a lot in the 15 minutes that I have with you today, and I will also try to speak less quickly than I normally do. We have lots of different types of challenges to materials happening in our country this day. There are scores of legislative and legal issues. We have challenges to our federal funding and infrastructure. and there are still always things that we can do. So what sort of materials are getting challenged? A lot of attention being paid to libraries, in public libraries and school libraries, and even academic libraries over the last couple of years, though those challenges to our resources have been stepping up in great numbers in the past year. One category is anything related to the LGBTQIA+ community, whether it's books that are written by or about queer content. It is getting challenged, if not outright banned, in places across of our country. There are some states where this is happening more frequently, other places where you might think it is not happening as much. I live in what's known as a progressive state, and yet we still have challenges to this type of content. Anything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion and race. There's been a lot of talk about critical race theory being used to describe anything that talks about the concept of race. The United States continues to have a very difficult time acknowledging our responsibilities around race and racism, and there have been the critical race theory concerns have been raised for years before we got to this point, where basically anything that mentions race is thrown up as something that we should be protecting our children from. And when we say that, we are being disingenuous about the realities of what our country is facing. We also are seeing materials besides books being challenged. There are attacks against entire databases of information. Vendors are being attacked for including information that might be deemed pornographic by some. And in the United States, it is a difficult assertion to say what is suitable and what is not. The First Amendment protects a wide variety of information, including some information that some people are uncomfortable with, but there are very few exceptions to what the First Amendment currently protects. It does not protect child pornography. It does not protect obscenity. It does not protect threats and harassment. But proving what counts as those things can be very difficult and is normally left up to a court of law. We are now switching to a time where just simply saying that something is offensive can be enough to pull resources either from the shelf or in this case from online resources. There are entire states that have canceled subscriptions to some library database vendors over concerns about their content. In some cases, the schools and smaller public libraries that depend on these resources have no other access to quality information resources. And so it's having a direct impact on their community's ability to access good information. Programming at libraries is also getting challenged. We have a popular trend at some libraries of having story time that is done with drag queens as a way to introduce some variety into programming, and that has been it's been attacked for years. But we're also seeing concerns raised and protests made about exhibits related to controversial topics. Here in Massachusetts, there was a library that had an exhibit about Palestinian art, and it happened to premiere shortly after the October 7th attacks in Gaza and Israel, and it became a very controversial situation with lots of death threats being issued against library staff for hosting such an exhibition, and it took a long time to resolve, though it's still not completely settled at this point. On the legal and legislative front here in the United States, we are seeing statewide bans on any materials related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. In In Utah, for example, an entire conference was canceled because there were concerns that there was information being shared about transgender people that was going against a state ban of even mentioning it in the schools. There are other states that have restricted the ability for libraries to have materials related to, again, the queer community, to anything related to race. And we are seeing lots of materials being removed, usually against existing policy, but now in trying to comply with the law. We're also seeing attempts to criminalize what librarians and library workers do, propose legislation that would make it a felony, a crime, to provide access to materials. Historically, there have been protections put in place for information workers that absolve them of responsibility for what's in their collections, provided that it is covered by the First Amendment. And now there are attempts to remove that protection. There have been laws that have been passed to remove certification from teachers who talk about materials that have been deemed to be unacceptable. And not only do they lose their job, but they lose their ability to teach in other places. There are a number of states that have disaffiliated from the American Library Association. Their state library agencies no longer are working with the American Library Association. And in one state, there was even an attempt to ban all library workers from participating in activities, depriving them of professional membership, opportunities, and resources, and moving away from the guidance that the association works so hard to provide to protect intellectual freedom and to protect the freedom of expression. What's a very concerning note is that in a legal case that's been in the courts lately, Little versus Llano County, Texas, this was a lawsuit that was challenging the removal of books from a public library, and the current status of the case is that the district court did not support the plaintiffs charged this was censorship. Instead, they said that books that are in a public library are considered government speech, and therefore the government can decide what is acceptable and what is not. It overturns 50 years of legal precedent and challenges the bedrock right to access information. This has not happened nationwide. It's only in effect in that district of the country, but it has set up a system where we have different standards for what is acceptable. And this eventually will have to go to the Supreme Court. And I am personally concerned about what that could mean given the current makeup of the Supreme Court. And this could mean that library collections in schools and public libraries will become subject to the whims of whatever political party is in charge. And that has grave concerns for the ability for people in this country to access information that might be deemed unpopular or is about a group that is being targeted by those in power. On the other hand, there are a number of states who have adopted legislation that makes it difficult or impossible to ban books by telling libraries that if they do not have the proper policies in place and if they remove materials based on partisan disapproval, that they will lose their funding or lose their certification. And so it's an attempt on the other side to address concerns about these bans happening in other states. And so we will right now see a very uneven landscape in the United States, where some states are working hard to protect access to information, and other states are working hard to have a more narrow view of what's available. At the federal level, there are a number of issues related to funding and to infrastructure. The Institute for Museum and Library Services, which is the only federal nationwide agency that supports museums and libraries, has been threatened with closure. There have been 2 different lawsuits to stop it. One of it was thrown out, another is still making its way through the courts. In any event, they have been effectively paralyzed. And the Library and Technology Services Act, which they administer and which provides funding to libraries of all types across the country, is in danger of being repealed. Grants that had already been awarded have been clawed back. A recent decision to exclude the mobile Wi-Fi internet hotspots that libraries have been checking out to provide internet access to people without the proper infrastructure in their areas. Those have been deemed no longer eligible for support under this federal funding, so it's another blow to free access to information. We have also seen the firing of the Librarian of Congress, Dr. Carla Hayden. She's in a nonpartisan position and had been appointed and was making great strides in opening the collections of the Library of Congress to the people of this country and the world. And she was summarily fired through an email. And it's the control of the Library of Congress is still a matter of debate because Congress was actually upset by this happening, it seems, and did not allow new people to be appointed. There was also the firing and reinstatement of the director of the Copyright Office. That person did fight the firing and was reinstated just last month. But we are concerned if someone is in charge of the Copyright Office who does not respect respect that role. There are concerns that all sorts of materials that authors have worked to create will be opened up for uses that might have been considered illegal or improper before, such as wholesale ingesting of materials into artificial intelligence databases. So a lot of hard things happening in this country right now. There are still things we can do. At the local level, we always encourage libraries to have updated policies to make sure that they are ready to meet the challenges that are coming these days. At my own library, we have updated our collection development policy, adopted a reconsideration policy for not only materials, but also for displays and exhibits, and for our digital collections. So even people who write about policy need to do this work, and I encourage everyone to make sure that their own policies are up to date. We also can educate the people who are in charge of our libraries, whether it's our political appointees in public libraries or the school boards or college boards of trustees, to understand the importance of intellectual freedom and why we need to support people's access to information so that when we do get complaints or concerns raised, they understand the philosophy behind our work. It's important to make sure that we have the support of our communities. And so we need to do the same sort of education with the people we serve so they understand what our philosophy is behind the work that we do as library professionals so that they can come to our defense when we are attacked. In this country, we also need to lobby our legislators to make sure that they understand what is at stake when laws are changed and when funding goes away. I am fortunate to live in a state where our legislators seem to understand the importance of libraries, but that is not a universal case across this country. And finally, we can support each other. I know that Loida, who invited me to be part of this, and I have been part of a number of text chains when different things happen where we check in on each other to make sure that we're okay. And one thing that heartens me about opportunities like this one is that we know that there's support from around the world where we are all facing challenges of different types. And if we can come together to support each other and share our frustrations and remind each other of what we're working for, we can get through this. So thank you for this opportunity to be in community with you this morning, and I look forward to hear more conversation.
Thank you so much, Martin. There is definitely sobering news around the world, and that's why it's so important that we mark the week of Banned Books Week. And at the same time, I appreciate that you provided strategies and thoughts on, things that can help librarians that are facing perhaps some of the matters that you also share, because unfortunately we know that some of those things have now kind of spread to different countries. And so much power to you too, and solidarity from all of us as well. Now I would like to welcome Essine Gemajo from Lebanon.
Thank you, Loida. So hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today. My name is Essine Gemajo, a Lebanese conservatory restorer since 2004, with a master's degree in information management. I would like to begin by thanking IFLA and its dedicated team for organizing this webinar, and to express my gratitude to Mrs. Basma Shibani, the president of the Lebanese Library Association, for giving me the opportunity to represent the LLA today. I'll be sharing with you some Lebanese insights and experiences reflecting on everyday crisis, everyday preservation, the Lebanese librarian and conservator rules. Lebanon is a country that faces continuous crises that directly affect preservation efforts. In this context, preservation has become both a daily operational task and a form of resilience. Librarians, conservators, and cultural institutions play an essential role in safeguarding collections, ensuring the continuity of knowledge and maintaining cultural identity despite ongoing disruption. So, a brief outline of my presentation. 1. Why preservation matters in Lebanon. 2. Crisis and preservation challenges. 3. The role of libraries and librarians in response. 4. The importance of digital preservation. 5. Isaac Library case study, preservation in action. And finally, the conclusion. Why preservation matters in Lebanon. What you are seeing now is more than the recovery of damaged paper. It's the recovery of Lebanon's memory. Every buried document, every manuscript damaged by humidity, every book covered in dust tells a part of our story. Lebanon has already suffered centuries of erasure. That's why preservation is an act of survival, and even in times of crisis, we refuse to lose our memory again. Lebanon is a crossroads of civilizations. It holds invaluable treasures such as manuscripts, rare books, archives, and oral traditions that reflect its rich diversity. Despite wars, neglect, and repeated disasters, Lebanon's library and archives continue to stand as a symbol of resistance. These collections are not only cultural artifacts, they are the guardians of our collective memory and identity, a symbol of diversity and values. It supports education, research, and cultural diplomacy. But the same heritage is fragile and vulnerable, constantly damaged by manufacturers. Protecting it is not a luxury, it's an obligation. Crisis and preservation challenges. The heritage collections in Lebanon are facing many crises and challenges. Environmental threats like pollution, climate change, and natural hazards put our collection directly at risk. Economic difficulties, including weak infrastructure, currency collapse, and inflation, mean that many institutions are underfunded and struggle to preserve their materials. Human factors, such as vandalism, theft, and negligence, also cause damage. Political instability and weak policies restrict preservation support. Disasters, from wars and conflict to the Beirut port explosion, have destroyed entire collections. Social challenges, such as migration, brain drain, and limited education, endanger cultural memory. The lack of professional awareness and expertise leads to improper preservation practices. All these forms of crisis make Lebanon a living example of heritage preservation under continuous pressure. This slide is a good example of infrastructure. It shows how power outages at the Lebanese National Museum put delicate artifacts at risk, forcing tourists to use phone lights to explore the collection. The role of libraries and librarians in response. Despite all this, Lebanese libraries have not stood still. We, as librarians and conservators, have taken multiple roles: preservation and documentation, access and continuity, advocacy and awareness, collaboration and solidarity. Libraries in Lebanon are resilience hubs, protecting and sharing memory in hard times. The importance of digital preservation in Lebanon. By digitizing fragile materials, we create a safeguard against loss. It ensures long-term access, provides duplication and backup, and supports research and education. Digital preservation helps reconnect the Lebanese diaspora with their cultural roots, giving them virtual access to the Lebanese heritage. In a country where physical preservation is often threatened, digital preservation offers a path toward continuity and hope. ISAC Library case study with a purpose and a mission. Since 2002, the ISAC Library has taken a leading role in this field. ISAC mission focuses on preserving and promoting Lebanon's heritage and community values. The ISAC Library is beyond an academic library. It's a heritage library engaged since 2002 to preserve the Lebanese cultural heritage and providing access to these resources. Preservation in action. ISAC was the first private initiative in Lebanon to take on a national role in preservation at a time when national institutions were largely absent. We began by preserving our own library collection when expanding our mission to offer preservation services to the public. We trained staff, built infrastructure, and established national and international collaborations. The strategic approach allowed the library to become a model for sustainable heritage preservation in Lebanon. The library has developed a full preservation process that includes physical treatment, cataloging and classification, conservation and restoration, digitization, outreach and awareness, consultancy, and public exhibition to disseminate these treasures. Each of these steps demonstrate that preservation is a living, active process, not just storage. To support this mission, ISAC created 3 affiliated centers: the Conservation and Restoration Center, caring for material with specific precision and passion; the Digital Development Center, ensuring digital reformatting, preservation, and access; the Phoenix Center for Lebanese Studies, serving as the custodian of Lebanese archives and research. Together, these centers form a complete system that supports preservation and the sharing of our national memory. Now I will show now how the staff of the Conservation and Restoration Center are preserving and caring memory against destruction. In this video, you can see a Quran manuscript that suffered strong mold damage after being exposed to water leakage for a long time. The moisture fostered biological growth, which weakened the paper and threatened the ink. This example clearly shows how essential it is to control humidity, prevent leaks, and act quickly to protect collections from further deterioration. Now we can see the state before restoration and after restoration. Another picture showing the damage and after restoration. Digital Preservation Initiative. Through the digital preservation efforts, we ensure the fragile materials are protected and accessible through repository that ensure data integrity. By doing this, we are not just preserving data, we are preserving and sharing context. Let's see a video of our Digital Development Center. Our digital gate. Through our digital gate, we are unlocking the past and making our collection visible and accessible worldwide. Content DM is the digital platform we use to manage and provide access to our archival and special collections, including archives, newspaper, manuscripts, rare books, theses, and dissertations. Visibility, accessibility, and partnerships. Partnerships have been essential to our success. The Library collaborates with the Endangered Archives Program of the British Library, the Library of Congress, the Hill Museum and Manuscript Library, the Moise Khairallah Center for Lebanese Diaspora Study. Through these collaborations, Lebanese collections have become accessible to the world, ensuring that even in crisis, our memory remains visible, valued, and shared. Conclusion, libraries are custodians of memory. Even in the face of daily crisis, preservation is possible with dedication, innovation, and collaboration. We must always remember that preservation is proactive, not reactive. This means acting before damage happens through preparedness, planning, training, and building networks of solidarity. Lebanon's experience teaches us that from crisis comes creativity, and libraries can stand as light of resilience and hope. Over 2 decades of experience as conservator, I've learned that living through continuous crisis has taught me to always be ready for action and response. Thank you for your attention, and I invite you to visit our website and follow us to learn more about our project and work.
Thank you very much, Essine. MLAS was glad to collaborate presenting the annual conference of the Lebanese Library Association last year around the topics that you presented. And so it makes sense to us to also include a representative from the association during this event because it's about the same topic. We had 3 very different perspectives today, all related to the same topic of today. And now I would like to thank our speakers, and I would like to welcome Jonathan Hernandez, Chair of FAIFE, and he will have our closing remarks. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Loida, and thank you all. And thank you all for joining us for this Banned Books Week webinar, an event that celebrates the freedoms to read. And at IFLA FAIFE, which is the Freedom of Access to Information and Freedom of Expression Advisory Committee, we consider this week a cornerstone of our work, as FAIFE mission is to defend and promote the core human rights of intellectual freedom and freedom of expression. So, as we saw during today's insightful presentation, libraries are no longer just sanctuaries of knowledge. They have become operational battlefields. So, a limitation of intellectual freedom, whether through censorship or restricted access, disproportionately impacts communities that already face structural injustice. Such restrictions limit their ability to access crucial information, share their experiences, and participate meaningfully in the public spheres. So, just to mention some highlights from the webinars, today we heard, as Loida mentioned, 3 different perspectives that are all interconnected. The presentations demonstrated how libraries are at the forefront of this effort, advocating for access to information even in time of crisis. We heard a transformative perspective on intellectual freedom from the right to read the land. And this presentation offers a powerful reframing of how we think about knowledge and access. And we also receive a sobering overview of the challenges facing library collections in the United States, including the latest legal and legislative issues. And additionally, we learn how libraries in Lebanon are serving, are serving as resilience hubs, showcasing their vital role in preserving knowledge and providing support during times of crisis. So finally, this webinar was a vital reminder of some fundamental truths. When a book is banned, a story is silenced. The freedom to read is incomplete if some voices are never heard. And we need to lobby legislators to understand the importance of libraries and the need to make partnership stronger. So we leave this event with a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper understanding for our role as librarians and advocates. Thank you once again to Paea, Martin, and Esin, our wonderful speakers. And a special thanks to you, Loida, and Chair of MLIS, and Yasuyo, Chair of LTR, Library Theory and Research Sections, for making this important conversation possible. So I think that Loida will take a Snapchat. Yeah. You're muted.
Oh, I did it. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Let's take a screenshot with the speakers. Let's see. Anyone who wants to be on the screenshot can turn the camera on too.
Yes, you can turn your camera on if you want to be on the screenshot for IFLA Media.
Right. To the count of 3 then. Here we go. Oh, I see more cameras on. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you very much to everyone. I know some of you are very late at night. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Thank you so much. I think we did it. We got it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.